downplayed the role to him. I said, well, I'm not sure that I want to hire. I'm not sure that I'm ready. And I was waiting for him to kind of come back and kind of push me a little bit and say, well, if you hired me, John, I could take care of this situation and bring all this revenue in. And he didn't do that, which kind of, I thought, well, if you're a salesperson, you should always be closing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I wonder sometimes to say, well, I'm not really sure I want to fill this, but not really sure. I mean, I don't know that that's going to get somebody excited about a position, too. It kind of reminds me of one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and it's awkward moments in interviewing, and sometimes and I'm going to go through awkward moment situation. I had a candidate, they were asked about a role on their resume, and they clearly don't remember it. It's like, remind me, what did you actually do there? And then it's an awkward moment because it's kind of a broad question and they don't remember it. So it's like when candidates are backpedaling like that, it can get awkward. But and then the salary thing, what's the range? And everyone stares and no one blinks. What's the range? If that comes off too early in an interview, that's never a good thing. It should be more about what is the job content. What are you going to be doing? Who are you doing it for? What's the past experience that the company's had in roles like this? And those things are a heck of a lot more important. But what do you think? What do you think a company's saying when they say something like, "We're like a family here, Mark"?
Everybody's a family until the day they fire you.
Yeah, and I said, yeah, that's kind of exactly, it's like, we're kind of a family here, and you're not in it.
So
So hey, you want to be here? I don't know.
I always tell people when I fired them years ago when I had when I had direct reports. I don't anymore. I used to say, Mark, sorry we have to let you go, but remember you're always part of our family. Stop by anytime. Thinking
God.
that I hope I never see you again.
Yeah. So here's something that's newer too that companies have run into with this is one of the reasons I advocate for in-person interviews is because some candidates are like the over-prepared script reader. The answers are too flawless. They sound too good. And it's like you realize at some point as a listener that they're actually reading it and scrolling.
Yeah.
And it's not their stuff.
Right.
So, so that's kind of a big warning sign. And there's another one that I thought of is like when people are asked, and why are you really leaving your current role, or why do you really want to get out of there? And then some people kind of crack and lose their interviewing face or whatever you want to, and they say something truthful, and it's like doesn't resonate well. It's kind of like, Then you start wondering, well, is it the candidate or is it the company? Or could this candidate end up being our problem if we hire them? So I don't know. Have you ever been, and you haven't been on a lot of interviews, but I know there are candidates that have been on interviews where they felt like the people that's interviewing them, the individual hasn't even read their resume.
Oh yeah, right. And that's typically me because I
haven't looked at it.
Thanks
for coming in. What's your name again?
Well, that's almost it.
Great.
I know that when we have an interview, I know we have people. I know we have people in the building. I see them walk around. I go over and I say hello. And what's your name? What do you do? And I kind of do the question I like to ask is, just give me the synopsis of where you are. How did you get to where you are in life today? Now, I don't want to know about your skills. I don't care about your skills. I just want to know, like, where are you in life? You're doing this. You found this has worked out. That hasn't worked out. Just kind of give me a synopsis.
Yeah. Well, you've mentioned in the past too. You like people that come from families where maybe they have a 24/7 business.
Right. You hire farmers.
I told somebody, the farmer thing. I said, this is my client. He likes to hire farmers
and restaurants.
So put farmers in your AI system, in your applicant tracking system. Yeah, look for people that have been farming
or have parents or grandparents that own restaurants.
Okay.
Because I worked in a restaurant. So that is I can't.
sense a lot of.
I suppose we can't swear on the podcast. But.
No, not until after midnight. But
It's
no,
kind of
it's
a,
like don't put farmer on your resume, and don't put grandpa owned a Italian restaurant unless you're interviewing with John Rinaldi.
Well, yeah, because but that shows to a work ethic. When you talk about working in a kitchen, working in a restaurant,
I get it. It's also taking out the garbage and then ordering the with the vendors.
You see the hours that your parents work or your grandparents work. It gives you a real appreciation. My father worked 6:30 in the morning till 2:30 at Miller Brewery. Then he came home, had a quick dinner, and he was out pouring concrete for the next 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
He was working 16, 17 hours a day, every day. And I talk to kids now, and the idea of working more than 40 hours is abhorrent to them. I think they said this on the last show. We had a guy that came to us and said that he just couldn't imagine how he could work more than 30 hours because it just interfered with his personal time.
Yeah. Well, let me talk. Yeah, that's the from the hiring manager perspective. I want to talk from a candidate's perspective today in 2026 and some of the situations that we face. And that's why if you're working with a reputable recruiter, they can kind of cut through these situations so you don't find yourself in them. But have you ever been in a scenario where you're told that the position's top priority, business critical role, and the search has executive visibility, timelines are important and they're compressed, and after a strong first round of an interview that you have with the company, things just go silent. And then you find out that they're just recalibrating the role. It's like, where do you think this is going? Yeah. And then, my translation of that is some sort of an internal power struggle is probably broken out.
Yeah, that's probably true. It's who is this person going to work for?
Yeah, they can't agree on the actual profile, or
and
someone internally is lobbying for the position. And they were
in the bigger organizations, that's right. All of a sudden, somebody shows up who wants that job, and they have a sponsor higher up in the organization who also wants them to get that job.
Yeah, right.
And then that screws up the interviewing process with a candidate. That's why I would. Well, that's another thing that people should decide. Do you want to work for a big company or do you want to work for a small company?
Well, let me ask you this.
There's advantages to both.
Yeah, for sure. Well, do you want to be, let me ask you this. If you're interviewing for a position and there are 10, they're going to do 10 interviews. Do you want to be that first interview or do you want to be that last interview? I mean, keeping in mind, if you are the first interview and the second interview or the third interview and you really kill it, somehow crush it, they might never get to 10.
Right.
So, and here's my concern. And I'm answering the question I'm asking you.
Good. I'll just sit here. I have to sit here and just look at you then. Lucky me.
You're brought in, you ask deep strategic questions and so forth. And, it's almost like your answers or your questions about the position, come back later. And it's like you're basically a lot of times the yardstick or the benchmark candidate, if you're that first candidate. Because I've had so many clients over the years, and it doesn't happen anymore because I'm better at what I do now than I was 30 years ago.
Thank God.
Finally. Yes. Thanks for your support. But it's, I've brought in candidates that are really good right away, and then my clients will say, we really liked them, but, we can't hire the first guy we see. That's crazy. It's like,
it's not crazy.
No, it's not crazy. It's like there's a reason I sent you that guy. It's because I vetted through 10,000 others already over the past 30 years. You want me to bring those people in? I actually had a client that said, yeah. I said, I want to see him first. And so I strung out the A candidate, for a week. And then the last guy I brought in, he says, Robottom, if you ever send me another loser like that, I will never work with you again. I said, hey, I gave you what you wanted. And I don't like doing that because that was a waste of my candidate's time, and that's just not fair to them either. So,
if they're not right for the position, I mean, it isn't fair at all for them.
But if you come across a candidate that you think is really good, you should move on them. And that's where you got to be, prepared and ready to go and really know what you want, because a lot of times that candidates, if you stretch out their interest in the position, they're going to eventually it's going to wane. They're not going to have the interest they once had. I see that a lot. So,
well, I talk to a bunch of candidates too that say that they do 3, 4, 5 rounds of interviews now because they're all on Zoom, and it's easy for the company to schedule a Zoom interview. That's another downside of Zoom, is that, hey, we can schedule 15 people today. We'll just spend all morning and half the afternoon doing interviews, one after another. Okay, then 8 of them we'll schedule on Friday for another 3 hours of interviews, and it just goes on and on and on, and then they don't make a decision. When they bring somebody in, they're kind of committed to making a decision. So
I agree.
That's another good reason to hold out for an in-person interview.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So sometimes these larger companies too, they'll have people in there that they'll have panel interviews, and people are already decided what they really want for this role, and they're not in agreement, and a candidate gets caught in between it.
Right.
So I'll just say in an awkward moment, one interviewer says this role needs fresh outside thinking. That's what we're looking for here, John. Fresh outside thinking. And the next interviewer says, we really value our internal culture and community here. So it's like, I'm like, you can't win. You can't. So it's like the internal versus external candidate war. You don't want to get in that.
You have to run.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and how do you know sometimes until you put yourself into these situations too? You really want to know that they don't have internal candidates before you go and interview there.
Well, that's true too. I think that when you're working with bigger companies, a recruiter probably is of more value to the candidate.
Yeah.
And in a smaller company, you still have the problem of you have the money problem. Is the company ready to spend the money on this position?
Well,
have they really allocated the money and they're ready to spend?
Right. And how do you know that as a candidate?
Yeah,
that's where you need an agent and you need a screener for you. How about you weren't this is like the when companies aren't sure what to say to people or how to reject them because maybe it's something internal and that they'll say, we really liked you a lot. We think you were an A candidate. We're concerned about the cultural fit. How do you overcome that one?
What the heck is a cult? But that could mean anything.
That's what it's usually.
The cultural fit.
No examples. No incidents. Yeah, just vibes.
Yeah.
I got a vibe.
We don't like people like.
Oh, I got a vibe.
I don't like people with hair.
I don't. Yeah. Well, like. It's like the discrimination thing. It's like people are getting discriminated against all the time. It's like if the cultural, you're just not a cultural fit. Wow. It's like okay.
So, then you have the people who are looking for people who are not a cultural fit. If you get somebody who's completely outside the box, maybe there's a good reason for being a cultural fit so that you can work together well. Like, see, the people that work for me are all Midwest people. We all share pretty much the same kind of values in the Midwest. If we brought in a California guy or a New York guy, that would not be a good cultural fit probably because they literally people in the different parts of the country are different kinds of people. Not
you can't say that.
Yes, I can.
We're all equal.
That's right. You're going to want to get sued. I mean, it's your.
Oh yeah. Well, what a waste of money. If you're an attorney out there, don't waste your time. Got a huge umbrella policy. Oh God.
Yeah, you should see the house he lives in. Woo.
So yeah, right. So here's another interview scenario when you're interviewing for the ghost job. So a role's posted publicly. Recruiter outreach is aggressive. Interviews proceed, and it's like all of a sudden you get ghosted on the job. Well, the maybe there's a merger and acquisition or a RIF pending. That they're going to let people go. I don't know. Maybe there's a budget reallocation. Maybe they never had money for the job. Maybe they're just fishing to see what's out there and what's available. Because sometimes companies will bring people in for market knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see that with some small consulting companies that will just interview candidate after candidate after candidate with my help.
So
good
that they can,
people
so
that
they
are
can,
prepped
so
and
they can,
prepared.
they can ask
And
them questions
yeah,
and learn
and then they
and
walk
learn about
away,
the technology.
and I
or
swear
who
to
they
God,
work
they
with and,
they start rolling the tape. Let's see what he said, and
what can we learn
yeah,
about what's going on in
that
company?
doesn't
What's company Y doing? And
yeah, that doesn't happen to me
how do
anymore.
we
I
do
figure
that?
it out. We do that. Yeah,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
I don't do that, but
yeah.
I'm not smart enough to do that.
Have you ever been on an interview with a senior level person who says something like, walk me through your background, and again, I think this is a scenario where they haven't necessarily, there's no sense of urgency. It's like, walk me through. You did not look at my background. You don't have a question about my background.
Well, but
It's,
but that goes back to the question that I just asked a few minutes ago. Tell me about where you are. How did you get to where you are in life? I want to know what kind of person you are.
yeah,
I really like that question, because it tells me, because it allows the candidate to tell me what their personal values are. Okay, I went to school here, and then I decided that I needed to take a year off and go to the Peace Corps or go work for my church for a year. I mean, you can learn a lot by asking that kind of question.
yeah.
So I think candidates should. I think candidates have to tell their prospective employers what kind of person they are. Demonstrate the stuff that makes you you.
Yeah. So, what if have you ever been told you were a finalist or exceptional, or, in the end, that we loved your rejection? It was really hard to pass you up. It's an awkward moment.
It's like Mark, I had a great time on our date, but I'm not going to go out with you anymore. But it was really fun. You're a great guy. You're
That would have been a lot more forward. I could have taken that a lot better.
It's the same kind of thing, right?
And
Yeah, I don't. It was. I had such a great time going out with you, but I'm not going to ever do it again.
well, one of the things that I've read is that outside candidates are investing more time in some of these interviews with case studies and presentations. And
yeah, well, that's what we do. We make candidates
yeah,
have to do.
you bring them in.
We bring them in, and they do a 15-minute presentation on
Yeah,
a
but
project you've done.
you pay them for 2 days.
No, well, that's the engineers. Yes,
Yeah.
the engineers. The marketing people and salespeople, no, they have to come in and present because we want to see what they're like on the floor, how well they answer questions.
Well, okay, let's be honest. Have you ever taken somebody's ideas and used them and not hired that person?
No, because
Would you admit it if you had?
no, because we're such a specialized technology company. There's nobody that's going to come in and show us something that we didn't really know, or something that we hadn't thought about. So, that's just not going to happen. But in other places, if you're a PR firm and you're bringing in somebody from another PR firm or this exact same business, if it's a more common business, I'm sure that happens.
Yeah.
I'm sure that happens. You got to be careful about you got to be careful about what you tell about your old company too.
Oh yeah. Well, why? What? Don't tell.
Right.
Everything's confidential.
Well, then there's that stuff. Then the candidate. What do you think? Should the candidate go out to? What's that website where they rate their employers?
Oh, Glassdoor.
Glassdoor. Yeah,
There are a
Glassdoor.
couple of them, but yeah.
Now, do you advise your candidates to go look the company up on Glassdoor?
I advise them that most of the postings on any space that allows for negativity are from people that are going to say something negative, and a lot of times they're the problem.
Yeah.
So I myself personally am very cautious about even rating a restaurant that maybe I've had a bad experience.
Yeah,
It's like
I don't do that.
it's like whatever. Why do I need to tell the world it sucked? Maybe someone was having a bad day.
Well, sure.
It's like cut them a break.
The
I don't
restaurant business could be so different. If you went and had the same meal the next day,
totally
and
agree.
a total different waitress, different cook, you might have just really loved it.
Well, and I've had people rip on like my favorite restaurants, and you and I both, I would say we both go out quite a bit, but it's
not together, by the way. Let's make that.
Oh, good Lord! Please make the distinction.
I don't want to imply any relationship here.
All right, this is not a relationship show, John. I told you that.
That's next Tuesday.
All right. Well, here's the big truth for candidates that are interviewing for jobs in 2025 and 2026. You know, if you're not working through a friend or a colleague that knows something about the company and something about the position, it's your responsibility to really to review the company and to find out if this is really a critical hire. And in order to do that, I think you have to ask, questions that are related to that would reveal that. Like, how long has this position been open? And what do you think the key components are to find the right candidate? And companies should be able to answer those questions, and they should be receptive to them too. So I think another thing that's really important to me as an external recruiter is, what's your sense of urgency? How soon would you like to have somebody on this job? Mm-hmm. And if you hear, oh, well, we don't want to make a bad hire, it's like, give me a break. Hey, thanks for listening. You've been listening to me, Mark Robot, and my guest, John Rinaldi, on WXRW FM 104.1. River West Radio. You can always email me, mark@robotum.com. And I appreciate the feedback from our listeners. And I will be having some additional guests coming up. We got a lot of AI guests. One of them is a radiation expert, so we're going to talk about how AI is impacting the medical field. And we also have a legal expert, and we're going to talk about legislation and AI in the upcoming robo shows. Again, Mark Robotham, WXRW 104.1 FM, River West Radio. Thanks for listening.